Okay guys, as you can see, we've got our 440 big block MOPAR, the other guy, up on the dyno, and it's right away, it's awesome because it's running and it's up on the dyno, which is really cool. But because I shot so much footage of this thing on the various things that we did, I'm gonna have to break this video on our other guy 440 up into probably 2, maybe 3 different videos, which would be good because normally I'm just sitting down in the corner of a dyno screen and talking to you about, hey, it made 28 horsepower when I did this or 16 horsepower when it did this. And as much as I love dynographs, that's really not that exciting for everybody. So I thought you guys would want to follow along and you could see what we're doing to get the thing ready to dyno and what changes we had to do, because we pulled this thing, well, somebody pulled this from a Winnebago application, you know, an RV application, because of 440, they use that in a lot of stuff. And luckily for me, I didn't even have to go to the wrecking yard and get it. In this particular case, Freiberger loaned it to me. So on my way down here to West Tech from Northern California where I live, I got to swing by and see Steve Dolcich, which, you know, if you're a Mopar guy, you know who Steve is, and he's like 100% awesome guy. So I stopped by and picked it up from him, so I've got some video footage of that, which is awesome. And we got it here to West Tech, but to get it ready to go, what we had to do was, because we knew we were going to do a cam change, I wanted to do a spring upgrade on it. We had to get exhaust on it. We had to figure out what flywheel to use. We had a little bit of issue with the carburetor because it originally came with a thermal quad. So we had all kinds of stuff. So we got some cool stuff coming up. We'll go ahead and get this thing up on the dyno, make some runs, and show you how much power it made and show you what we had to do to actually make that happen. And then we'll finish up and maybe go on to the next episode where we do cam swaps, and there's a lot of video footage on that because I got a lot of help from Steve Relay and Troy, and we knocked that thing out pretty good, so that's cool stuff. And I'm hoping we get to run like NITROUS on this thing, and because we see we got our plate installed on there already, and we're getting ready to make some hits with that, so I got high hopes for the NITROUS stuff. And then naturally we want to finish up with a turbo, and because every, you know, junkyard motor, even a RV motor 440 needs turbo, especially this one because they're such low compression, they're literally just begging for boost. So rather than buy some expensive like turbo kit for a Winnebago or RV or whatever this thing came in, I'm just going to show you guys how to do it yourself. I mean, it's got cast iron stock exhaust manifolds, which are actually ideal for a turbo application. So I show you how to whip up a turbo kit using the stock exhaust manifolds and get a little boost to this thing, because, you know, nothing's better than a motor that's like less than 8 to 1, probably somewhere in the 7s. The thing that really wakes them up is boost. So let's get going. We'll get this motor up on the dyno, show you what it took, make some runs, and then follow that up with cams, NITROUS, and boost. What happens when they say you can borrow 440 from a motorhome? This is awesome. I'm over with Dolcich. I think this is Freiberger's motor. Got a trans still attached to it. Gotta go ahead and pull that off. We're gonna take it over, run on the dyno, see what happens. It's a lot easier than going to the wrecking yard. Although this one looks like it just came out of a wrecking yard. It's cool stuff. Here's what happens when you're riding dirty. After picking up our 440 from Dolcich and getting here to West Tech, before we put it up on the dyno, I wanted to make sure that we did a spring upgrade on it. Now, we were definitely going to do a cam upgrade on it, so I wanted to make sure we had enough valve spring and it was easy to perform this operation. So I'll let you take a look and see what happens, how we perform the spring, what we used, and how we did it. Got a MOPAR 440, got to change springs on it. When this doesn't work, and this doesn't work, you know, shaft, you gotta make your own. Drill a couple holes, nice plate. Now we got to put it back on. On like Donkey Kong. Springs up here. Go ahead and do a lasso that row. Put the beehives on everything else. So we finished the spring swap. Now we're putting our stock rockers back on. You see Steve Brulé told me this little trick right here. Put the welding rod through, keeps the push rods in the right position. He's all fancy like that. Take the shaft rocker. These stock cast iron exhaust manifolds that I borrowed from Steve Dolcich would obviously work well for our turbo application. But on our NA motor, where we were running cams and nitrous and such, we decided to install a set of long tube headers. They're always good to help promote torque production, so even if you've got one of these in a motorhome or something, think about getting long tube headers. Definitely a good idea. The Mazir electric water pump allowed us just to install that. That was easy, just bolt on deal. We didn't have to worry about driving anything off the crank or having the factory water pump or anything. So the Mazir is nice. It made life easy. We just turned it on. The good thing about the Mazir electric water pump too, when you're running on the dyno, is you can use it to cool the motor down. If you're getting ready to take the motor off, you know, cool the thing down real fast. Get the thing off the dyno, get the next one up. Another consideration for dyno use was the distributor. Now this particular 440 came with electronic ignition, and the distributor, lucky for us, was in this thing. And this thing came out of a vehicle, it was running. So it was actually kind of already timed for us as well, which is nice. But we just hooked up this electronic distributor with the wiring here, you can see. They changed the wiring so that it would work on our with our HVC coil, and we also had a digital 7. That also worked with this much simpler 6AL, but the digital 7 was nice because it allowed us to retard the timing when we would eventually put nitrous on this motor. One of the non-stock items on our 440, our loaner, was this Edelbrock intake manifold. It's even painted blue, which is kind of cool. Edelbrock Performer 440. But one of the issues we had is it did not come with a carburetor, and this thing was flanged originally for, this thing probably had a thermoquad on it. So what we had to do is, because we didn't have a thermoquad here to test with, we had to convert it for use with a Holly. So I'll show you what we did. So to convert this thing to a Holly, what we did was use the same thing everybody else uses. Lucky for us, this intake had both of the bolt patterns on it, which was nice, you see. 2 patterns. We had studs in it because we were going to run, first of all, we're going to run the spacer. So this is a conversion spacer, just like Holly on this side. Quadrajet and thermoquad kind of on this side. So we just ran it kind of upside down here. So what we did was install our adapter there. so that we can then, we're free to mount our Holly, which I'll show you guys what that looks like. I'll put our gasket on there and install our Holly. After installing our adapter, it was time to put on our Holly, so we installed the Holly gasket and then installed our carburetor. This was a 750 Ultra XP, it was a dual feed. You can see the line from our dyno here. This goes into our AN fitting. This was a good carburetor, sized right for our application for the intended power output, and lucky for us, our Performer 440 intake manifold had both bolt patterns for the Quadrajet and for this Holly. Before we get started on the conclusion, I got to give a big shout out to my lovely wife, Lisa. She's the one responsible for the thumbnail on this video, and that's the Motorhomes Assemble with me looking in all the world like Nick Fury. Great job, Lisa. Thanks. Now, on to our conclusion here on the 440. We did get it up on the dyno. Obviously, we got it running. I was able to do the spring swap in preparation for our camshaft, which is coming up. And we were able to make some runs in what we call not so stock trim, because as we saw, we didn't run the thermoquad carburetor because it didn't come with one. We also had an Edelbrock intake, and here's a little bit of a spoiler for the next session coming up, the next episode. This is not a stock cam either, apparently. Freiberg told us that he thinks that the original owners that had this motor that pulled it out and swapped it, I think, for a diesel, I think, in their application. But this thing had a very small, like RV style cam, which means that it's basically one step or maybe even just a half step up from the factory cam. So it'd be coming from like a 195 cam to a 202 or 203 cam. So it's not a big step up, but it's definitely not stock. But the thing runs good, it's all solid. So that's all we want. We want a good running motor. Now we can do a camshaft upgrade. We can also run a little bit of nitrous on it, or maybe more than a little bit, whatever. And then finish things up with a little bit of a boost. So, motorhome engines, assemble!